Italian verbs have a high degree of inflection, the majority of which follows one of three common patterns of conjugation. Italian conjugation is affected by mood, person, tense, number and occasionally gender. The three classes of verbs are distinguished by the endings of the infinitive form of the verb: first conjugation, arre; second conjugation, arre, or new arre, considered part of the second conjugation, as they are derived from a Latin air but had lost their internal e after the suffix fused to the stem's vowel. Third conjugation, arre; third conjugation, arre with infixed isc. Additionally, Italian has a number of irregular and semi-irregular verbs, including essere, to be, avere, to have, and ere, to go, stare, to stay, to stand, dare, to give, fare, to do, to make, and many others. The suffixes that form the infinitive are always stressed, except for ere, which is stressed in some verbs and unstressed in others. A few verbs have a misleading, retracted infinitive, but use their unretracted stem in most conjugations. Fare comes from Latin facere, which can be seen in many of its forms. Similarly, die comes from dicere, bear comes from bear, and por comes from ponere. The present used for events happening in the present, habitual actions, current states of being and conditions. Io credo, I believe; lei dorme, she sleeps. Pronouns are not obligatory in Italian, and they are normally only used when they are stressed. The conjugation of the verb is normally used to show the subject. Credo, I believe; credi, you believe; dorme, she sleeps. The pronoun tu is used in the singular towards children, family members and close friends, whereas voi is used in the same manner in the plural. The pronouns le and loro are used towards older people, strangers and very important to respectable people. Note that le and loro can also mean she and they, respectively. Lei Virginia, you are going to Vi, you are going Vi, you are going Virginia, you are going. The irregular verb essere has the same form in the first person singular and third person plural. Sono, I am, they are. The forms vedo and faccio of the standard Italian first person singular forms of the verbs and ere and fare, but vo and fo are used in the Tuscan dialect. The infix isc varies in pronunciation between isk and I, depending on the following vowel. Similar alternations are found in other verbs: legard, lo, I read, versus legi, lddi, you read; dico, dico, I say, versus dici, diti, you say, etc. The past present perfect. The present perfect is used for single actions, or events, or change in state, contrasting with the imperfect, which is used for habits, or repeated actions, not happening at a specific time. Italians, with the notable exception of Southerners, typically use the present perfect also when referring to ancient facts, in a similar fashion to French. The past participle is needed to form the present perfect. Regular verbs follow a very easy pattern, but there are many verbs with an irregular past participle. Verbs in are addato to the stem, parlato, amato. Some verbs in are add uto to the stem, creduto. Verbs in are addito to the stem, partito, finito. Other verbs in are irregular, they mutate the stem and addo, so, sto attito to the stem, preso, preso, leto, ltto, rimasto. Fare and dire do exactly the same thing. Fatto, detto. Compounds from the root dire similarly have dotto. Venar has venuto and bear has bevuto. Stare and essere both have stato. Verbs with arre. All transitive verbs and most intransitive verbs form the present perfect by combining the auxiliary verb arre to have in the present tense with the past participle of the transitive verb. The past participle agrees in gender and number with third-person object pronouns, if these precede the verb, following the same pattern of nouns and adjectives: o masculine singular, a feminine singular, I masculine plural, e feminine plural. When not agreeing, the participle always ends in o. Il ragazzo che ho visto, the boy I saw. L'ho visto, I saw him. Ho visto il ragazzo, I saw the boy. La ragazza che ho visto, oh, the girl I saw. L'ho vista, I saw her. Ho visto la ragazza, I saw the girl. Verbs with essere. A small number of intransitive verbs, namely essere itself, and verbs indicating motion use the auxiliary verb essere instead of arre. The past participle in this agrees with gender and number of the subject. Reflexive verbs always use essere, but the past participle agrees with the subject or with third-person object pronouns, if these precede the verb. Mi sono lavato, I washed myself. Si siamo vista, we saw each other. Si lavato le gambe, he washed his legs. Se li lavat le gambe, he washed them, his legs. Si siamo parlati, we talked to each other. Imperfect. The imperfect is used for repeated or habitual actions in the past. Ongoing actions in the past and ongoing actions in the past that are eventually interrupted, whether time and age in the past, states of being and conditions in the past. The imperfect is, in most cases, formed by taking the stem along with the thematic vowel and adding v plus the ending of the verbs in the present tense. There are no irregular verbs in the imperfect, with the exception of essere and the retracted verbs, which use the full stems. Loro parlavano, they used to speak. Absolute past. The absolute past has almost exactly the same function as the present perfect. It is used for events which are distant from the present and no longer directly affect it, for example when telling a story, whereas the present perfect is used for more recent events which may have a direct impact on the present. The absolute past may at all times be replaced with the present perfect. In many areas of southern Italy, it is still used commonly in spoken language, whereas in northern central Italy and Sardinia it is restricted to written language. Like the past participle, regular verbs are very predictable, but many verbs are irregular. Regular verbs are formed by taking the stem and the stressed thematic vowel and adding sti, the accent mmo, sand, and rono. The verbs in a have o in the third person singular instead of the expected a. Ama, ami, amasti, amo, amamo, amaster, amerono. Credere, credii, credusti, crede, credemo, credest, crederono. Dorma, dormi, dormasti, dormi, dormimo, dormist, dormerono. Are irregular verbs, which are almost exclusively of the second conjugation, have irregular stems to which the exits I, e, and iro are added to form the first-person singular and third-person singular and plural forms, respectively, and, with the exception of veni, which takes the normal third conjugation endings, the second conjugation exits esti, mo, and est are added to the normal stem to form the second-person singular and first and second-person plural forms, respectively. Rompere, ropi, romsti, ropi, rompemo, rompest, ropero. Videre, vidi, videsti, vide, videmo, videst, videro. Da, disi, dicesti, disa, dicemo, dista, dicero. Some verbs in air that follow the regular pattern have an alternative form in ati which follows the irregular pattern. Credere, credeti, credusti, credet, credemo, credest, creditero. Essere is the only verb that is completely irregular in this tense. Past perfect used for activities done prior to another activity. The past perfect is formed the same as the present perfect, but with the auxiliary verb in the imperfect. Amo, arrivo, imato, arriva, ero, arrivato. In literary language, an absolute perfect exists which uses the absolute past of the auxiliaries, and which is used for activities done prior to another activity which is described with the absolutive past. Amo, abi, amato, arriva, fui, arrivato. The future. The future is used for events that will happen in the future. It is formed by adding the forms of arre to the infinitive. Sometimes the infinitive undergoes some changes. It always loses its final e. Verbs in are end in not in are. Stare, dare, there however retain star, dar, far. Most irregular verbs lose the vowel before the last r altogether. Clusters near and are simplified to are. Retraced infinitives are retained. Essere has sa. To these, the respective suffixes o, I, a, emo, ete, ano are added. Historically speaking, these are derived from the present forms of the verb avere. Future perfect, used for events that will have happened when or after something else happens in the future. The future perfect is formed the same as the present perfect, but with the auxiliary verb in the future. Amo, avro, amato, arriva, saro, arrivato. The conditional. Conditional used for events that are dependent upon other event occurring. Politely asking for something. The conditional is formed by taking the root of the future and adding the absolutive past forms of avere. Past conditional, used for events that would, could or should have occurred. As a prospective past tense e.g., non sapevo quando sarei arrivato. I didn't know when I would arrive. The conditional perfect is formed the same as the present perfect, but with the auxiliary verb in the conditional. Amo, avre, amato, arriva, sare, arrivato. The subjunctive. Present subjunctive, used for subordinate clauses of the present indicative to express opinion, possibility, desire or doubt. The subjunctive is formed, for regular verbs in are, by taking the root and adding ino for all the singular forms and the third plural respectively. For most other regular and semi-regular verbs, by taking the first person singular of the present indicative and replacing the final o with a. Ano for all the singular forms and the third plural respectively. For a few irregular verbs, by taking the first person plural of the present indicative and replacing stressed amo with unstressed a. Ano for all the singular forms and the third plural respectively. For all verbs, the first person plural is identical to the present indicative. For all verbs, the second person plural is the first person plural with te instead of mo. The subjunctive is almost always preceded by the conjunctive word che. Imperfect subjunctive, used for the subordinate clauses of the imperfect indicative of the conditional. The imperfect subjunctive is formed, for regular verbs, by taking the infinitive and replacing re with ssi, sse, simo, and shiro. For retracted verbs, by taking, instead of the infinitive, the stem plus the thematic vowel. The only verbs that form this tense irregularly are essere, there, stare, dare. Past subjunctive, used for subordinate clauses of the imperfect indicative of the conditional. The subjunctive perfect is formed the same as the present perfect, but with the auxiliary verb in the subjunctive present. Amo, che bir amato, arriva, che sia arrivato. Pluperfect subjunctive. The subjunctive pluperfect is formed the same as the present perfect, but with the auxiliary verb in the subjunctive imperfect. Amo, che avessi amato, arriva, che fossi arrivato. The imperative. The imperative is used for giving commands. The second-person singular imperative is formed for regular verbs in are by taking the third-person singular of the present. For other regular verbs, by taking the second-person singular of the present. For and, dare, fair, and stare, by taking the second-person singular of the present, either shortened to the vowel before I, not. For dire, by shortening the stem to die. For a few are irregular verbs, by taking the singular form of the subjunctive and replacing final a with I. The polite form of the singular is identical to the present subjunctive. Objective personal pronouns are placed before the verb, unlike other forms of the imperative which have these after the verb, etc. Closing parenthesis. The first-person plural is identical to the present indicative but allows for pronominal suffixes. The second-person plural is usually identical to the present indicative but in a few irregular cases to the present subjunctive. The polite plural is identical to the present subjunctive. As with the polite singular, objective personal pronouns come before the verb as opposed to after it. Credi, they leave, crediamo, let's believe, Negative imperative. The second-person singular uses the infinitive instead of its usual form in the negative, while other forms remained unchanged. Non credia, don't believe, Nominal verb forms. Italian verbs have three additional forms, known as nominal forms because they can be used as nouns or adjectives rather than as verbs. The past participle has been discussed above. The present participle is used as an adjective or a noun describing someone who is busy doing something. For example, parlant means talking, or someone who is talking. Verbs in a form the present participle by adding anti to the stem. The verbs in arre and irre form the present participle by adding enter nte to the stem. Fair, dire, bear, poor use the long stems to form resp. Facente, dicente, bevent, ponente, essere has essence. The gerund is the adverbial form of the present participle and has a very broad use. For example, parlando can translate to talking, while talking, by talking, because of one's talking, through talking. The gerund is identical to the present participle, but with final te replaced by do. The gerund can be used in combination with the verb stare to create continuous expressions. These are similar to English continuous expressions, but they are used much less extensively than in English. Sto lavorando, I'm working. Stavo mangiando, I was eating. Keep in mind that the gerund is an adverb, not an adjective, and so it does not agree in gender and number with anything. The ending is always o. La ragazza sta mangiando, the girl is eating. Like the imperative, all nominal verb forms have their objective personal pronouns suffixed rather than placed before them. Mi parla and gt, parlami, parlando me, parlami. Si pon and gt, por si, ponendo si, poniti, mi lo dicen gt, d'mello, dicen d'mello, dimello. Shane e Virginia via and gt, Anderson via and Anderson via, vatten via.